Entering the West Midlands market town of Nuneaton, there are signs saying, Nuneaton and Bedworth, united to achieve. But in the town centre the upbeat slogan does not rest easy with the prevailing mood. The traditional industries that once drove the local economy, coal and textiles, have all but disappeared. It is now a dormitory town for nearby Birmingham and Coventry, and people complain that its centre is dead, that its shops are struggling. Paul Bull, the local butcher, is one of those anxious about his and his town's future. "I've seen trade get less and less, year on year," he says. "There are fewer stalls on market days and they usually pack up early, even the nice weather doesn't get people out." At every election, local or national, the attention of politicians and political pundits turns to Nuneaton, a key marginal, a bellwether seat in the heart of England that oscillates between Labour and the Tories. It is a place to gauge the national mood and the political temperature in Middle Britain. It expressed its discontent at the 2016 referendum by voting by 66.34% for Brexit. Last week, after 8 years of Conservative government at Westminster, and against the backdrop of crises over immigration and the NHS, and deadlock on Brexit, Labour had hoped to benefit from Theresa May's troubles and consolidate its position on the local council. Yet Labour went backwards. Its tally of seats fell from 25 to 17 while the Conservatives went up from 7 to 16, depriving Jeremy Corbyn's party of control. Peter Kong, 48, a financial planning and analysis manager in the town, has voted UKIP in recent elections. But he now looks to the Tories to deliver on Brexit. "There's no point voting UKIP because they're just a spent force. It's about making sure the Tories do what they're supposed to do over Brexit. Voting Labour doesn't do that." Yet that UKIP dividend for the Conservatives, on a night when the party Nigel Farage once led lost 123 seats and held just 3, could become a curse as well as a blessing, at least for those Tories who fear the consequences of an all-singing, all-dancing hard Brexit. As the smoke cleared after an election night with no clear victor, one theme of capital importance was being identified by polling expert Professor John Curtis. The mass defection of the UKIP vote to the Tories in Leave areas could store up huge problems for Theresa May, placing the Prime Minister under even more pressure to deliver the kind of clean Brexit that her new backers, the ex-UKIPers, crave. The vote that is helping to buoy up Theresa May's popularity is very much a Leave vote. Curtis told the BBC. If the Conservatives are going to hang on to that vote, they are going to have to deliver a Brexit that, broadly speaking, appeals to the sympathies and instinct of Leave voters. After a week in which pro-Brexit ministers had already quashed plans for a customs partnership with the EU that the Prime Minister hoped would help unlock the Irish border question, Curtis's assessment was further music to their ears. Boris Johnson quickly took up the theme on Twitter, that Tories had to reject a customs union or partnership and buy fully into a hard, clean Brexit because that was what voters said they wanted. Jeremy Corbyn has been abandoned in many Leave areas. His pledge to stay in the customs union means he is not trusted to deliver Brexit. PM's clear Mansion House vision for leaving the single market and customs union a key part of Tory electoral success, the Foreign Secretary tweeted. But there is a problem that will not go away. Last week the Irish government made clear again that it will veto any Brexit deal that fails to deliver a frictionless border between North and South. Neither in Brussels nor in Dublin, nor in soft Brexit circles in Westminster, can anyone see how that frictionless border can be achieved without some form of customs union, one that ever more people who vote Tory say would amount to a Brexit betrayal. While Tory successes such as Nuneaton may create their own problems, Labour is contemplating a set of results which convey some disturbing messages, and deepen its own angst over what to say and do about Brexit. Theresa May speaks to party supporters in Dudley. Photograph. Reuters. Labour scored some notable successes, robbing the Tories of control of Trafford and Manchester and taking Plymouth. It performed better in London than at any time since 1971. But there were similar stories to that of Nuneaton in too many other areas of provincial England where it had hoped to do well. Some Labour MPs and council candidates in the party's ranks said the results were nowhere near good enough for an opposition fighting a governing party that had been in office for so long, and that never seems able to wrestle free of crises. On Saturday, Labour's Angela Smith, a member of the influential parliamentary committee representing backbenchers, said it was time for the party to take a long hard look at ourselves as many voters don't like what they see. Former Shadow Business Secretary Chuka Umunna said, after 8 years of Tory misrule, most people thoroughly tired of austerity, a disastrous Brexit negotiation, the Windrush outrage and 4 cabinet resignations in 6 months, we should be well ahead and we are not. If we don't ask why, then we risk losing a fourth time at the next general election. Labour lost 3 councillors in Derby, ceding overall control, as well as losing their leader, Ranjit Banwait. In Basildon, the Conservatives took control of the council as they picked up half of 10 seats lost by UKIP. In Redditch, another Leave voting area, Labour struggled, losing 3 seats while the Conservatives picked up 4 to take control of the council. Just as damaging to morale was Labour's failure to take, or make the hoped-for headway in, any of the traditional Conservative strongholds in London, Wandsworth, Westminster, and Barnet, where the row over anti-Semitism in the party had a devastating effect. The relief among Tories, even though they lost 33 seats, was palpable. The national picture showed them neck and neck with Labour, but they had outperformed expectations that had been pegged very low. The Liberal Democrats had cause for celebration too, retaking Richmond and Kingston-upon-Thames councils. Theresa May looked happier than for months as she congratulated Tories in Wandsworth and taunted Labour. Labour thought they could take control. This was one of their top targets and they threw everything at it, but they failed, she said on Friday. Calls are growing from Labour's Remain majority for it to be bolder in backing a soft Brexit. Corbyn will address the parliamentary party a week tomorrow and will face calls for changes of direction on many fronts. Labour MPs say the crisis over anti-Semitism needs addressing urgently and is damaging the party more by the week. Gillian Lazarus, a former Labour supporter in the borough, told The Observer, "I've always voted Labour and have been a member off and on. I come from a Labour family and I'm the granddaughter of Jewish immigrants. Could not vote for Labour in the council elections, because I have witnessed the rampant and unremitting anti-Semitism coming from the Labour environment." But for both parties, Thursday's elections above all revealed just how much of British politics is being refracted through the prism of Brexit. Peter Kong in Nuneaton is not alone, and the Tories must work out how to appease their increasingly hardline support. 70% of Tory voters are now Leave supporters compared with 30% of Labour ones, according to polling analyst Rob Ford. For its part, Labour desperately requires a strategy that stiffens its Remain resolve without alienating voters in the passionately pro-Leave towns of provincial England. Calls are growing from Labour's Remain majority for it to be bolder in backing a soft Brexit and membership of the single market. They say, would open up clear water between the two largest parties. Why did we fail to do better in London and why did the Lib Dems get back in the game in areas we need to be progressing in, asked one Labour frontbencher on Friday. Because people think we have no policy on Brexit that is different from the Tories. Remainers don't think we are with them. We are a pro-EU party without a pro-EU policy. Key parliamentary votes are approaching. A group of Labour peers is protesting this weekend that Corbyn is not backing their efforts in the Lords to promote amendments to Brexit legislation that would allow the UK to effectively stay in the single market. Corbyn fears any move that would appear anti-Brexit would hit Labour support hard in the many Leave areas where it routinely returns MPs, a view backed by many of those MPs themselves. While the likes of you want to push for soft Brexit, or no Brexit, other senior figures in the party argue the reverse. As a crunch period approaches, in which Britain's future trade agreements with the EU must be agreed one way or the other, the time for judicious equivocation is almost over. Last Thursday's poll suggests that, for both of the main parties, there is no easy option available. But an option must be chosen. Election Voices Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall and leading pro-Brexit campaigner. These results suggest many ex-Labour UKIP voters don't yet trust us to genuinely honour the referendum result. While this is the case, we simply cannot win the seats we need to form a government. Those who voted Leave in Labour areas want us to stick to our manifesto promises and not be pushed into a Brexit that is in name only. Chuka Umunna, Labour MP for Streatham and leading anti-Brexit campaigner. Neither major party can treat these results as any kind of endorsement. On Brexit, clearly the country is not coming together behind the Prime Minister's hard Brexit plan or, frankly, the alternative Labour is offering. People deserve leadership on Brexit, the biggest issue of our time, which will fundamentally impact on our ability to end Tory austerity, reduce inequality and poverty, and spread opportunity, and we have yet to see it. Bernard Jenkin, Conservative MP for Harwich and North Essex. Be wary of drawing conclusions from these results about Brexit. Either Conservatives deliver what the people voted for, or we risk looking indecisive and paralysed, which would never be rewarded at the ballot box. Most people who voted Remain want us to get on with Brexit. Governments are rarely rewarded for a reform program which drags on without conclusion. Sir Vince Cable, leader of the Liberal Democrats, we enjoyed a number of gains in areas that voted heavily to leave the EU, including Sunderland and Hull, as well as Remain-leaning areas that commentators would have expected us to do well in. This shows that people respect parties if they have the courage of their convictions, even if they disagree with them. It also reflects that while there can be these disagreements, it is still the case that people correctly place high value on the ability of a party to effectively run a council. Anna Soubry, Tory MP for Broxtowe and anti-hard Brexit campaigner, Vince not Brexit won it for the Conservatives in this week's local elections. That view may not be shared by Tory councillors who lost their seat in places like South Cambridgeshire, Richmond and Wandsworth, but by and large it was hard graft on local issues by moderate, competent Conservatives that saw off Labour and in places even won us seats. The real story is Labour's failure to make the sort of progress we feared they would, and which they should have made. Suzanne Evans, former vice chair of UKIP, the collapse of the UKIP vote worked mostly in the Conservatives' favour in this election, as the bulk of the Leave vote went to them. This sends a clear message to Theresa May. She must deliver a clean Brexit, one in which we are fully independent from the EU, no fudges or compromises, or UKIP will rise again, strongly, and swiftly, and the Tories will face a massive loss of electoral support at the next general election.